Welcome back to the channel. So, to be honest, I'm really not feeling well today. I canceled a bunch of interviews, but I was thinking this would be a perfect opportunity to do this specific interview because since I'm not feeling well, I know it's not an extreme, but at least I can have a little bit of a taste while we discuss the following subject. Um, the selection process, the torture, the experiments, the counts. um, I remember once I was by a friend's house and it was howling outside and it was freezing winter, and it was the child of a survivor, and the wife says whenever there was weather like this growing up, our father would say this was an opportunity for the Nazis to take us outside. So I want to ask Sami to talk on this subject specifically today because I'm not feeling well. Obviously, not even a drop in the bucket, but at least my mindset might be right for the topic. Maybe it's a favor from God. How are you, Sami?
Uh, I'm doing well. I'm very honored again to be with your audience and to tell you how I feel, what I think about things that happen. Uh, your question brings me to an interesting answer. Uh, if you ask any survivor, how come you're alive today? Everybody will use only one word: luck. Obviously, if you are religious or if you were religious, everything comes from Hashem, from God. Uh, but for the lay people that are not religious, I think the word luck is probably the most appropriate. In my particular case, I was lucky three times. Number one, I was never separated from my parents. Number two, I was subjected to medical experiments. And a German woman who had access to the camp because she brought food to the guards in SS saved my life by giving me milk. Okay, and I don't know if your people know the Yiddish word knip.
Uh,
Okay,
when we were kids, if we they thought we were cute, we
yeah.
would get. We didn't
So
like it very much.
right. So my father used to tell me that a German woman, when she saw that I got some color in my cheeks, she used to pinch me, give me a knip, and she used to say, "Those are my rosy cheeks." So not everyone was a criminal. There were some good people, unfortunately, not enough. And so everything that happened is the way I see it is for a reason. Okay. I came once I started to speak in 2008. Uh, if I ever thought before that things are by coincidence, I have come to realize and fully believe that everything is meant to be. So it depended in which country you were, what type of a camp you were, who the guards were, who were who was the commander, how strong you were, how old you were. Were you willing to take risks, like to try to escape and to run, knowing that you might be shot from the back and the back? Were you willing to jump from a running train? Uh, were you willing to live in a sewer, in the forest? So there are many, many variables. So when we are talking about medical experiments, when we are talking about beating to death, starving to death, uh, there is no rhyme and no reason that we can explain it. Okay? Uh, the way I look at it, it happened. We have to learn from the past. Personally, I do not talk about the pain like other survivors. because for them it is raw. I am not only the first generation, also the second generation child of Holocaust survivor. So for me, it is not as raw. At the same time, I was too young to remember those days in the camp. And number two, until the Eichmann trial, the Holocaust survivors did not burden the children with those horror stories. They wanted to have a normal childhood. So therefore, for me, I concentrate more on how did it happen. And I go to different stages, which I did on the first presentation, and trying to teach, to educate the young people that if we sense any signs of injustice and do not act on time and appropriately, it will escalate. Every dictator, okay, will try to test, okay, the ground, which means they are starting slowly to escalate things. If the response is not very strong, they will keep escalating and escalating until it comes to a point of no return. So I want especially the young people not to make comparisons from the past, to learn from the past, and to stand up to injustice and hopefully prevent future tragedies.
Understood. It's it's interesting the way you speak. It's I think that growing up as a Jew and in the Jewish community, we understand the Holocaust to be very real and as intense, and as much as Hollywood tries to make these movies look so powerful, that this doesn't even scratch the surface. But from the way you speak, it sounds like it was exactly as bad as we picture it. There was hatred, and there was a disregard for life, and it must have. We've spoken about this. It must have been terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
For the people that were caught in that situation, it was. Imagine yourself, uh, they did it during the day, they did it at night. But I'll give you two examples. Imagine yourself that during the day, okay, they would go to several homes, would knock on the door, okay, and shoot the people in front of everybody. Then
Wow.
they would come to you and they tell you you have 5 minutes, okay, to be in the plaza. Number one, what can you take in 5 minutes? Okay, you know that if you're not going to comply, you will be dead. It's the whole family with you. The other thing is, imagine the fear, not knowing, okay, what will happen to you, where you are going, okay, for how long, when you're coming back, the children are crying, so it's a situation that is difficult to imagine. Imagine all of a sudden, at night, at midnight, there is a knock on the door. Okay, schnell, go into the plaza. Very okay, fast. Uh, it's difficult to imagine how people felt. We can talk about it, but unless you are specifically caught in that situation, it's very difficult, at least from my perspective, to imagine how they truly felt. So I cannot speak to that. I know it was horrifying, uh, but you cannot put in words how people felt. Uh, the older survivors, they will talk about the horrors that they went through, which is very real. But like I said before, my main point is not to talk about the pain. Every person that goes through a trauma, a tragedy, a difficult obstacle, for them the pain is real, very strong. Okay, So everybody knows that what happened during the Nazi regime was extremely difficult and painful. So and unfortunately, I'm the only one that my emphasis is how did it happen? And I have to repeat again, how is it possible? It's difficult to imagine that ordinary people from Germany, from Europe, from other countries found that not only acceptable, but required to annihilate one group of people, the Jews. It's beyond belief. Once they were going to murder all of the European Jews, they wanted to open up a museum. That's why they had artifacts, they had records. The Holocaust is the most recorded crime in human history. And once you are going to murder all of the European Jews, they wanted to open up a museum. They were going to call the Museum of the Extinct Jewish Race. That's why it's important to talk about the history, not to compare it to the past, okay? To understand what hate can do not only to a person, but to a group of people.
Right.
And unfortunately, as far as I know, I am the only one that does that.
I think that it's definitely true. You can't plan for the future without learning lessons from the past.
That's how I feel.
It's whenever I see these documentaries, you see a lady in her apartment in Miami Beach, and she's talking about her experiences, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe the way God makes the world, you're supposed to believe there's excuse me, there's a balance. So at the same time that she's remembering forever her horrors, she still gets to see, as Mark Twain says, that we walk on the grave of our oppressors. She has her grandchildren downstairs by the pool. Is this it's a confusing, or it's a beautiful thing? This is at least the payback for the torture. How do you see the beautiful futures that they get to live with the horrible memories stuck in the mind? I know you said you're more of a logical person, more of a factual person, but obviously, we all have emotions, and you're highly intelligent. You understand how other people are thinking.
For me, every person reacted differently, okay, to the horrors that they went through. People that had faith were able to accept things much easier than people without faith. A number of them, because of the miracle that they survived, the miracle of the establishment of the state of Israel, became very, very religious. Other people, okay, questioned how was it possible that God allowed something like that to happen. Obviously, God did not do it. People did it. And they became agnostics. I am not in the position to judge, okay? That's up to God, to somebody else, okay, to do the judgment. But my mission is to show and to give a different perspective of what happened, and to stand up to injustice. And I am going to repeat something that I said before. When Germany in 1938 annexed Austria, became part of the Greater Germany, in Austria, they did mentally and physically ill experiments on them, and they murdered them. And here it is important for people to not to be afraid to speak up. A German priest found out about it, made it public. There was an outcry in Germany. And guess what? The killings stopped. But not before the Nazis, okay, murdered over 200,000 mentally and physically ill Germans. And the best part of it, the German priest was never punished.
I was gonna ask you, they didn't kill him?
Nope.
How does one get away with that?
Because that was like a testing test. They wanted to see how people will react. And since they did not react in time, okay, once the priest stopped and they started to talk, they stopped the killings. But they did not react in time. So as you can see, it kept escalating. They went further. Then came Kristallnacht and everything else. So that's what I'm trying to say is do not be afraid, especially for young people, to speak up.
Sounds like it's not that you shouldn't be afraid because nothing's gonna happen, but you shouldn't be afraid because if something's gonna happen, you might as well go down fighting and give it your best shot, which is a level of courage that maybe we don't have nowadays because we haven't been faced with that. But it's logic more than anything. At least give yourself a chance.
Yes. And, some people call me a hero. And I'm saying I'm not a hero. To me, a hero is somebody that does something out of his or her comfort zone. Myself, educating the young generation, I'm in my comfort zone, so I'm not a hero. I just do what I love to do. I also learned something interesting. There is a big difference between a teacher, being a teacher, and an educator. And if you look at my business cards, you will see that people called me and I accepted that I'm an educator. But I wanted to know there is a difference between the two of them. To be a teacher is a profession. It's what you do. You're an instructor. And teachers concentrate primarily on what, where, and when. As an educator, you
It's awareness, maybe more.
it's a way, okay, of life. It's your mission. It's you concentrate as an educator on how and why.
Uh-huh.
And I just realized the difference between teacher and educator only about a month ago. And looking at my experiences and the way I talk and what I do, I have never been a teacher. I've always been an educator because I concentrate on how and why.
Right. Well, you're definitely educating me, and I appreciate it. I think we're going to I think we're going to stop here if that's okay with you. I'm holding in my coughing bout about as much as I can, but this was fascinating. This was really, really eye-opening. Thank you as always, Sammy.
My pleasure, my honor, and Refuah Shalem.